Yeah?
Yep.
Cool. Hi guys, welcome to the Grapplers Academy. We're back with some technique video today, but what we're actually going to be starting off with is a little bit of theory on the subject that we're going to be covering. And it's more to do with guard passing, so we're going back to a little bit more fundamentals with this and breaking down some key concepts that are going to help you improve your overall guard passing, and then we're going to go into some more specific techniques after that.
Yeah, so we're going to start today, sort of give you sort of our ideas on distance management when you're trying to pass the guard, and also entering the guard that you want to pass as opposed to playing in your opponent's game, because we all have a preferred side, a preferred guard, and preferential techniques for how we want to get past someone's guard, but we also need to know how to get there first before basically getting swept and ending up on our backs and on the back foot. So for me, one of the key things here is distance management, risk management, and almost trying to push your opponent into being a reactive player rather than proactively chasing things. And you've got like a similar style, haven't you?
Yeah, we were talking about it a little bit before we started recording, and just as a general rule of thumb in grappling, if we're attacking, we're looking to kind of take away space from the opponent. And from a defensive point of view, we're usually looking to try and create space so we can make frames, move our hips, and get into the positions that we want to get into. But there's almost kind of like a weird non-verbal agreement that we make when we do jiu-jitsu, whereby we say that when our opponent falls to the right hand side in an open guard, let's say for example, or a half guard, that just non-verbal agreement, because we always drill the same way, that by automatic habit we just go into that guard. And the person on the bottom has got hundreds of hours in that position, they're very comfortable with it, so why not take it the other way to the side that they're not that familiar with, put them on the back foot a little bit and start to attack dictated on your pace, not on the terms that they've set out in the position that they've given you.
Yeah, because if you enter into that guard that they are presenting to you, you've essentially handed the control over to them. And if you're actively trying to pass the guard, you want to try and maintain the control and progress your positions rather than giving them the easier hand to deal with, which could result in submission or sweep and you ended up playing catch up for the rest of the round.
So that can be quite difficult to do in itself, can't it? Because a lot of times when we're talking about, we drill in the same positions, and a lot of times we joke about jiu-jitsu is oftentimes completed on like one side first, and then you're going to go back and complete it on the left side. It's a bit of a joke, but it's a joke because it's true.
Yeah.
Oftentimes people are drilling the same side and get into a bad habit of only learning the technique on one side. If you get into a good habit of doing that both sides, you can put the ball in your court and start to attack on your opponent's weak side or the side that they're not familiar with. And as much as we like to think that we're just going to be, if we know a certain defence or pass from half guard on the right hand side and you've got like hundreds of hours of drilling it there, just a quick change. It's like switching to brushing your teeth with your left hand. If you're right-handed, you know how to do it, but it feels a bit awkward, and you're going to be on the back foot with it, and it puts the person attacking, if they're ambidextrous in their attacks, or even just to the point of like doing it where the opponent's not familiar with it, even though they're familiar with the technique, it puts the ball heavily in your court and stacks the odds in your favour.
No, definitely. I think as well. Lost my train of thought there. But you want to keep the ball in your court essentially when you are trying to pass, and you don't want to give away advantages too early. Like even if it's a more experienced player, you don't want to play into their hand regardless of how much you respect them, because at the end of the day it's a combat sport and you are trying to progress yourself. You may have different techniques side by side, so passing to your left you may have 2 or 3 passes that you know are really good, and passing to your right hand side you may have different set of passes, but it's knowing how to get into those positions as well to make it better for you. And if you, like Bon said at the start, if you find that your opponent is falling to one side, put them onto the other side, using what we're going to cover in shortly, and get them on the back foot straight away, because they're going to try hard to get you back over to the other side. And it's being solid in your technique and your attacks really to keep them on the side that you prefer.
I think that it's a trap that newer players can fall into a lot easier than more experienced players. And I think for like a new white belt or blue belt rolling with a purple belt, or a more experienced blue belt, or whoever you get the opportunity to roll with who's more experienced than you, there's a bit of intimidation there and a bit of hesitation to dictate your game, but probably because your game's weaker and you're going to try and go with the flow of what the more experienced player is giving you. And that's a great opportunity to learn and learn what they're presenting you. But we also need to learn how to flip that to the guys that you're rolling with who are the same level of experience, or the guys that are a little bit lower level of experience with you, and you can start to dictate your pace on them. And like we talked about right at the beginning, Jiu-Jitsu, it's either about closing space or making space, depending on whether we're attacking or defending. So the technique that Shai's going to go through with us today is about space management, which is probably one of the most important things in all combat sports, whether that's striking or grappling. And you've got a really nice use of the hand on the head for space management. So that's what we're going to have a look at today, and then we're going to expand on that with some different passes and some different techniques off that key fundamental principle.
Definitely. So typically when we start a match, we are sort of one up, one down, and I prefer to start a match if I'm rolling the gym on my feet, because it gives me more options to then either go down to my knees to pass, enter in my preferred guard, or see what my player's going to do as I'm moving around. So one of the things that I will start off with is this hand on the forehead. Now I'm not going to go wide open palm, and I'm not going to go super light, because if Bond clears my hand here, there's no resistance there. But in the same light, it doesn't affect my base and where my weight's going. And then the other end of the spectrum, I don't want to be leaning all the way forward, so if he does clear my hand, I'm losing my balance. So it's getting that sensitivity in your hands and in your own body, and unfortunately this is only going to be done by reps, in knowing how to maintain this pressure and having constant forward pressure, but also keeping your base right. So if Bond does clear my hand, my base stays nice and steady. And we're also trying to treat the head like a basketball, really. So we're not going to go open palm, and we're not going to try and crush it. We're just getting a firm grip on the forehead, opening nice and wide, and using your thumb and your pinky just to create a little bit of pressure. So if he does try to clear it, there's a bit more resistance there from them. As we're doing this and we're moving around, this also stops Bond from coming in at a faster pace. And if he does come in underneath the hand, he's going flat. So this gives me more of the mobile advantage on him, because a flat opponent's going to move slower than a stood up opponent. But he's also going to move slower than if he was sat up, because if I move around this way, he's going to follow much easier. If I move backwards, he's going to follow easier. And if I move into his space, he's got more ability to get there. Whereas if he's flat on his back, I move around, it's going to be a bit of a slower movement. If I move backwards, there's a bit of a time delay there when in his adjustment. So using this here really helps us maintain this control. And then as a second hand as well, I can either, as he starts to clear it, I can then replace the hands, or I can use it to control the knee a little bit as well. So when I start to get the advantage, I can start to pass the knee across and step on the outside. Now one thing I do with this is I'm not going to step with the same side leg that I'm stepping to, because it just opens up my hips for attacks. So my way that I do it is I'll start to pass around the outside, creating a barrier between my body and his body. But also, if he does decide to turn into me, I can drop my hip down and I'm past the hips already. Now, the reason I'm doing this is I'm trying to get them into a reactive state and get them moving and not thinking as clearly as if they could move freely, to eventually where I can start to get in and underneath, grabbing the heels, and I'm going to pull the legs up and back and get him flat on his back. When I get here, I'm going to keep hold of the heels, and I can either start to put myself into half guard, or I can push the heels down towards the hips and sit into this butterfly guard, which gives me the option to start floating passing, where I'm here and I can start to pass around this way, or I can make the decision to sit into a butterfly guard, but Bond's flat on his back here now as well, and I can start to shut everything down and pass the way that I want to pass to either side. Anything else to add to that bit?
No, I think the other nice thing about having that pressure on the head as well, from being on the receiving end of it, is it does make me do something rather than just sitting here and waiting for a reaction, because I've got the force on my head. I'm kind of leaning back, and either if I'm not pushing in, I'm going to place my hand out behind me just to secure my own balance as a first off. Another thing on top of what Simon was saying as well, just to build on that, is it gives you a point of contact with your opponent as well. So if you're the guy on top and you're not necessarily being super active with the passing, you can kind of follow your opponent and be a little bit more in touch. And there's like a bit of a sensitivity, isn't there, as well, that you'll get from the touch, knowing when they're about to move. Sometimes if we're just looking, we're reactive. Whereas when we're feeling for it, we've got an earlier warning or an earlier trigger to know that they're going to be going for something. And like I said, if they start to dive under or even try and stand up and re-engage in the wrestling, you've got that point of contact where you can start hitting snap downs or just being in a more controlling position from the wrestling if it does come back up to the feet. So strong technique, strong fundamental technique, and it's one of those ones that kind of transcends across from just this position into a lot of other stuff as well.
Like I said, we're not saying that this is a perfect technique either or perfect example of what to do. This is something that I found works for me, and it's something that I've had to develop sensitivity with, and knowing from different opponents and different mistakes I've made doing this, how to apply this pressure and how to maintain good contact. So if it doesn't work first time round, or you find that you're getting frustrated doing it, give it a bit more time, give it a few more reps, and do some semi-live rounds rather than doing it in full rolling, so you can get to feel with it, get to grips with it, and have a little play and experiment. When I have done this with my students in the past, they've found ways to get round to the back really easily. They've found ways to jump into a knee cut. They've found ways to roll for that jumping Kimura from passing as well. There will be opportunities that will open up, just provided that you give the theory some real thought and some real time into practice.
I think kind of one of the, if we're looking at any potential negatives from it, which we're talking about now, that can get chiseled away over time, is generally we don't want to overexpose anything with our arms, because that's where we're going to be opening up space. If I was overexposing my arms from the bottom, jumping flying triangles there, all these sorts of things. So I don't want to generally tend to overcommit. Now, even though from the top, Sai technically is overcommitting with his arm out straight, and that's giving me the point to be from defending to a point of contact. The way you're going to get the better practice on this is actually just how we're going to control our weight. So even if it feels like the opponent's going to start stripping and looking for arm drags, we can almost kind of use it like a bait in terms of a setup to get them to overexpose and now start controlling wrists and passing in your own way. So again, even though it might look like, if we're looking at the fundamental principle of not overextending, it's breaking the rules with an idea in mind of what we're going to try and go for off the back of it.
Yeah. And it goes back to one of the fundamental principles of Jiu-Jitsu of balance as well, because as we're doing it, we're not overcommitting the weight one way and we're not undercommitting, so we're not actually having any proper contact. We're sitting solid in our base and providing a stiff post. And again, I'm trying to avoid using the bent elbow while doing this, because it's just going to be a lot of pushing and tiring the arm out. If I go stiff arm, it's a full solid structure that's connected to my torso, that's connected to my base. So I'm not using unnecessary energy here. I'm using the energy that's required to then save me energy for when I need to use it later in the round.
Cool.
Make sure you hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, drop us a comment of your thoughts on this, and share it with your friends.